The Undercountry Music News is an excerpt of the weekly internet broadcast Undercountry Music, which features music from great country artists you won't hear on mainstream radio, as well as a roundup of the most interesting country music news of the week without all the fluff. This program you're listening to right now contains only the news portion of the show. To listen and subscribe to the full weekly episode containing the music and interviews, please visit undercountrymusic.com or simply subscribe to the Undercountry Music Podcast on iTunes. Let's get into it. Well, hello, beautiful people of Undercountry Music Land. It's me, Neal Smith, coming to you from high atop my internet podcasting tower. Except lately it's a whole lot more podcasting than broadcasting, and I'll let you know what I mean about that here in just a minute. But first off, let me say this, okay? If you're seeking the same old show about country music that you find everywhere else, where some plastic a-hole blows BS into a mic and does nothing but shovel roses and sunshine up your butt and claps his mitts together like some damn trained seal for everything the industry farts out. Well, you know what? The great thing about listening to a podcast is you don't just have it on and listen by accident. You actually make a proactive choice to listen to this show or any other show that calls itself a podcast. And I do want to give a nod to the a couple of the internet radio stations that do rebroadcast this show. This is not about you guys. Of course, this doesn't apply to internet radio, the ones currently carrying. But like I said, you make a proactive choice to listen to it. It didn't just come on by accident when you have a podcast and you've subscribed to it and physically gone out and downloaded it. Okay? And if I say something on this show that you don't agree with, you can write to me, undercountry at neal-smith.com. You'll find it in the show notes, and let me know. I'm not a hard guy to find. I'm not a hard guy to get in touch with. Or you have another choice, which is to simply turn it off or hit that unsubscribe button. There's a million country music programs out there that do nothing but tell you how wonderful everyone, everything, and every song that Music Row, patooties out. And regardless of how terrible it really is, you know what? If that's what you want, go listen to them. If that's your thing, you have no shortage of options. That's not what I do here. It's not what we do here. And by we, I mean myself and you, the people who listen and enjoy this show. All right. Now that it's just the people who are having fun here with me, I'm going to explain what I mean here. Why am I saying all this? Well, you see, I'm no stranger to ruffling feathers. Quite honestly, there was a time in my past when I would ruffle feathers intentionally, trying to gain notoriety for myself. And I don't do that anymore, at least not intentionally. Now, it must be something bred inside me, because I realize that I don't have to do it intentionally. The only thing I have to do is just be myself. And I can grate against the sensitivities of the masses just by being me. And I might not intend to, and I might not even want to ruffle feathers, but I've come to accept that it's just apparently what I do, and I'm good with that. I just do what I do and say what's on my mind, and sometimes that offends folks. Like a couple of months ago, I released the news portion of this show as its own show so that it can go on to talk show formats that don't allow music, and I put out, a title of one of my news things I put out entitled "Chris Young is a Wuss," and then I got tons of hate mail, and I basically had the internet equivalent of the townspeople at my door with torches and pitchforks, and honestly, I probably deserve that one. And, I put out what I felt about at the time about what was going on about things with him, and I'm not rehashing that one, okay? I've moved on. If you want to dig into that and see what all that was about, you can go to my past episodes. Have at it. Now, here's where I'm going with this. Now, 2 weeks ago on this show, in the news portion of this show, I responded to a news story I read about Randy Travis, which stated that many of his friends are speculating that Randy could be performing by next year, given the rate of his recovery progress, which has been very promising so far. Do I think that's a good thing? Of course I do. Anybody who's a human being with a shrivel of a heart would think that's a wonderful thing. However, I, being from the real world, thought it may have been a bit overly optimistic, seeing as how the guy still can't even talk. I mean, he's up and about and going to concerts and things, and that's wonderful. He's out and about, shaking hands, and but reports are that the guy is just barely able to even hum right now. And we're in August, so I think that while his friends are meaning well and his supporters, I don't really think that that's a healthy expectation to be heaping on this guy while he's trying to heal. And a therapist who was asked towards the end of that article that I read, about his friends and supporters thinking he could be out performing by next year, a therapist weighed in on this story at the end and also bolstered what I was feeling and put Randy's recovery and return to the stage at about maybe 3 years out, and stating his recovery has not plateaued, which is amazing and very promising, which means it's very likely. I then went on to make a bit of fun about the people pushing unrealistic expectations on this guy, as if he, isn't going through enough. He doesn't want, can you imagine all these people pushing him to get out on stage before he's ready? And I made some fun of those people. I did not make fun of Randy Travis. Now, let me qualify that. I'm not above making fun of Randy Travis, okay? And if I thought of making fun of Randy Travis, I might have, and I wouldn't give two craps about it. I just do it, okay? So, if I stated that if Mr. Travis were to walk out on a stage next year, it would probably sound something like this, and then I proceeded to sing a Randy Travis song in the voice of a stroke victim. And no, I'm not going to do that again right here, right now. If you're morbidly curious and just need to hear me do that, you can get on over to look up episode 127 of Under Country Music. Now, when I do things like this, for better or for worse, it's usually what I feel at the time. I get a wild hair and I just do it. A lot of times, sometimes I'm recording this show at 3 a.m. or whenever. So anyway, I do what I felt moved to do or say at the time. Was it in bad taste to sing a Randy Travis song in the voice of a stroke victim? Well, of course it was. Would you expect anything less from me? Okay? Now, you don't tune in here to hear Mr. Manners, and I don't see myself ever becoming Mr. Manners because, as I stated before, I spout what's on my mind, and I don't run around kissing everyone's butt in town. But, as I stated, the intention was to mock the idiots spreading very unrealistic expectations for Mr. Travis, and not Mr. Travis himself. And I believe that my numerous other stories about the man and his recovery progress, and my stating on this show repeatedly, episode after episode after episode, as I bring you new stories about Mr. Travis, well, I do have a little fun about his past history of drinking and fighting. I believe that my past reporting history will support that I do, in fact, cheer Mr. Randy Travis and his ongoing recovery, and I do. And I keep Mr. Travis in my prayers. All right, so anyway, where's all this going? Well, I went to upload my show last week to one of my various internet outlets. In this case, it was on an internet radio station that's been carrying my show for not even a full year, probably maybe 2/3 of a year. Music Road Radio, and I went to go upload it to their platform, and the password had changed on me. Now, this usually happens about once a month for security reasons, so that old DJs of theirs that they may have parted ways with can't get in there and wreak havoc on their station. But it was odd this time, because the password had just changed the week before, so this was kind of sudden. It was also not unusual that I had not been issued the new password, because honestly, since I began with Music Road Radio, the communication with them had been nothing short of a terrible joke. I mean, they never told me anything. I mean, I was like the Rodney Dangerfield of the platform. Now, originally, the idea was Music Road Radio was supposed to take the recordings of my shows as I released them and then put them on the air, on the internet. I don't know if you call it on the air, but their internet radio station, as a broadcast once a week. And the guy who runs it over there, nice guy. I got no problem with him. He simply couldn't figure it out. I'm not going to make fun of him. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, but I do think it's a little odd that a guy with an internet radio station can't figure out how to air a recording of something, especially a station as established as Music Road Radio. Anyway, it was pretty much a frustrating joke at that point. A lot of back and forth trying to get up and going. So finally, we just said, screw it. This is silly. And I'd simply upload my show to their server, and anyone who wanted to could download it. If they come across it while pootering around over there, they can just go, hey, I'll download this and listen to it. And that it would simply not be directly aired. Now, this guy was also quite aware of the type of show I do and how it could be offensive to some. And by that same token, I also understood and understand now that, although it was unspoken, that if the show were not well received and maybe started causing them problems because of me and my big mouth, that relationship would likely cease to be, and we just go our separate ways, all peacefully, all good still to this day. I'm just telling you what happened because I think it's interesting. Anyway, I went to try and upload my show last week, and the password had changed. So as usual, I email the guy and ask for the new password, and I get a polite response that, my Randy Travis, quote unquote, which I'm sure was referring to my singing the Randy Travis song in a stroke victim voice, had instigated a backlash amongst their listeners. Now, I'm paraphrasing to be fair. These were not the exact words used, and that they had received several messages from their listeners complaining about my show, and that the program director therefore had gone and removed all past episodes of Undercountry Music from their servers, and this was where we would part ways. He also did apologize about the bad communication with the continual password changes and not letting me know, and that's all good. Anyway, I responded stating, hey, I just do what I do, and no worries. I was at an event myself, so I couldn't write much more at the time. Later on that evening, after I got finished with the event, I wrote him a little more, and I thanked him for having me for the time he did. And that was almost a week ago, and I haven't received any response whatsoever. Not like, hey, that's all good, we're cool, blah blah blah. Nothing. Not unusual. The guy has never been very strong on the communication side of things, so that wasn't unusual. And, his letter was, it was cordial, so he wasn't like telling me I'm an a-hole or anything like that. So anyway, why am I bringing all this up, and why did I also mention the backlash I received about the Chris Young story earlier? Okay, here's where it all wraps up and ties together. When I released the Chris Young episode, I received emails, and my YouTube channel blew up with dozens of enraged responses. And, I'm sure I would have received plenty on my own website, except that I don't have comments enabled because I simply don't give a rat's ass. But the backlash was very noticeable, and admittedly, I probably deserved some of it. Through that whole thing, not a peep out of Music Road Radio about it. Fast forward to the episode 2 weeks ago when I sang a Randy Travis song in a stroke victim voice. Music Road claims they received numerous complaints about it. Well, here's the funny thing. There hasn't been a single comment about it on my YouTube channel. I haven't received a single email about it. Music Road Radio never contacted me about it, which isn't exactly unusual because they would never contacted me about anything. But I'm here looking at my listener statistics over at Spreaker.com for when I break out the news portion of the show where this aired, and where I put it out myself on Spreaker as well. See, their whole show is hosted on Spreaker. And I noticed that I have not lost one single subscriber to my show, which is, like I say, where they also host their content. So I went on to the Music Road Radio website and their forums also on Spreaker, and I did not see one single listener complaint posted in their forums. Not a peep, not a nada. Now, let's add to this by pointing out the fact that Music Road Radio is not even airing my show, only offering it as a download, meaning that the only people who could hear it via Music Road Radio would be ones who'd made a conscious choice to download and listen to it, and the questionable action of mine occurred in the news portion of my show, which means it was buried in the middle of the show, which means that anyone listening to it had to have heard not only the context in which it was done, meaning making fun of the completely asinine expectation that this man could be outperforming by sometime next year, and next year is only like 4 months away at this point, and they would have had to have liked the show enough to have actually listened to it up to that point. And my listener count over at Music Road Radio hovered weekly right around maybe 100. Not exactly massive. So I'm not here crying in my beer over using it. I just think this is interesting, so I continue. In fact, I was probably one of the lowest downloaded shows they carried. Yeah, you see where I'm going with this? I'm not crying over my partying of ways with Music Road Radio. Totally amicable. It's cool. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm a big boy, and I put my eggs in the podcasting basket, not the internet radio basket, because I don't want to be beholden to anyone or feel as if I have to push someone else's agenda or walk on eggshells with what I say. Otherwise, I get my platform ripped out from under me. So, it's all good. These are things I expect on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis to happen, and, it happens to people who kiss butt. They, for whatever reason, they show up to work and they're no longer on the air, and no heads up, no nothing. So it's not unusual, and it's one of the things you expect. Now, but what I am saying is that this backlash against my show, since I've already experienced one of those, I'm having a little trouble believing the accuracy of this report from the supporting data in this case. Well, what I think is more realistic is that lately Music Road Radio has been getting much more popular, and good for them. They've been doing a tremendous job over there. My hat is off to them. As such, they've got a little more at stake now than when I began with them. So they probably needed to take a harder look at the programming they do and, maybe weed out anything that might cause a potential problem for them as they attempt to monetize their efforts and attract advertisers, and as they veer more towards, the industry standard, for better or for worse, which is where I think Music Row is headed. And I think the reason they gave me may not have been completely true, with all things considered, which does leave me a bit baffled as to why they would make something like that up. I mean, it's not like I don't know I do an offensive show. They could have just said that my show's a bit too racy for where they're headed now. It's making them nervous about their advertising prospects, and this is where we part. No need to make up a kooky story about a listener backlash, which I don't believe. I mean, admittedly, they could have gotten a note or two, but, I absolutely don't believe there's anything close to being notable. But you know what? The world's a funny place, and some people just have a tough time being straight with you when they need to tell you something negative. Anyway, Music Road Radio is no longer for undercountry music, and that's okay. I wish them well, and happy to let you know that they still have a lot of great programming and great talent over there. It's very much worth your time and attention of going to. Where it's headed, I think it's going in the direction of, more pushing the Music Row line. The Nashville Crap Factory, I don't think they're there yet. They're still doing a lot of good stuff. For now, it's still a cool place to discover great shows and new artists. But I can guarantee you that when you listen to undercountry music, as you're doing right now, you'll always get the straight dope, no sugarcoating, and you know what? I'll flap my butt cheeks any way I want to on here, and that's what keeps it real and keeps it interesting. Are you ready to get into it? I think I have flapped my own butt cheeks enough, so let's do it here. Because it's time for the Undercountry Music News! The Undercountry Music News is the portion of the show where I get myself in all kinds of trouble. I go on to Google, I type in the search term country music news, and I look for the latest and greatest in the world of country music. And, I dig past the fluff, the garbage, the ninny hand-wringers who can't face reality. And I find the real, essential stuff you gotta know. And I compile it from this website and that website, and I smash it all together and give you a stinking, steaming, slimy ball of news, and I shove it in your face. And that's what the Undercountry Music News is. Damn it. All right. Now, if I go on a website that's stating that they report the country music news and they don't, I award a crappy website each week with the Undercountry Music News Wet Belch of the Week. Although I haven't done the belch in a couple of weeks. Every site I've been on in the past few weeks has reported news, and that's a good thing. I hope to never give that belch again. But I've got the belch holstered just as a precaution. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Over at CMT, Blake Shelton is dropping a new album September 30th entitled Bringing Back the Sunshine, and the cover art has been revealed, which is a black and white rendering of a water tower from his home in Ada, Oklahoma, with sunbeams shining down. No picture of it in the story, just a description of it, and that's all. That's about all they have to share right now. Hey, keeps them from the wet belch now, doesn't it? Over at Country Weekly, Wynonna has just announced her Christmas tour dates. Now, can you believe it? It's only August right now. The tour is called A Simpler Christmas Tour and includes performances in Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Florida, Michigan, Virginia, and South Carolina. Keeping it all on this side of the Mississippi, I see. Well, that's some crazy bouncing. It was in that order, too. And she's got a little crazy bouncing around, going from Pennsylvania down to Florida for 3 shows, and then right back up to Michigan. And let's wish Wynonna, her band, and her crew some very safe travels this December. And with those icy roads in the north, they're going to need it. Come on, global warming. Also over at Country Weekly, dozens of people were treated for alcohol poisoning at a recent Keith Urban concert in Mansfield, Massachusetts. 46 were treated and more than 50 taken into custody. I must say that I would also have to consume massive amounts of alcohol in order to enjoy Mr. Urban's music myself, although I do admit that the song Kiss a Girl is a guilty pleasure of mine. Something about that beanie she wears in the video. I think I have a beanie fetish. Anyway, over at Taste of Country, another story about Keith Urban. Man, that guy knows how to keep himself in the news, don't he? Keith Urban is making a plea to preserve Music Row from the threat of developers. Hey, I got an idea. How about we make a plea to Music Row to quit churning out crap? Let's start there first. Anyway, Keith Urban's making a plea to preserve Music Row from the threat of developers as Nashville grows and expands. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have a point here, but have you ever driven through Music Row? Well, I have, and just about anyone in the Nashville area has. I gotta tell you, there's not much there to see. It's, a somewhat business residential area. Not a lot of people out on the street. Not much of anything going on the street. The only thing you do is you drive down the street and you see signs out in front of the buildings, stating that, it's this studio or that studio. And you see a couple little billboards of whatever artists they're currently pushing. And that's really about it. I don't know what I'm missing here. At least from the street. I think the real history of that place lies inside the buildings, in the actual studios and the offices, and that's where that real history takes place. And those are places that, quite honestly, you and I are going to rarely get an opportunity to see. So I, it's a little tough for me to be that sentimental about the place. But this whole movement, and it's a whole movement right now. It started with Ben Folds, who mistakenly got the impression a few weeks back that the developer who purchased the building housing RCA Studio A was planning to destroy it. Well, the developer never had any such plans, it turns out. And Mr. Folds' planned gathering of Nashville A-listers to raise awareness turned out to be sort of a sheepish tucking of the tail more than anything, because the Studio A, which the whole party was there to fight to preserve, was never under threat. Well, we're going to have some more about Studio A, but let's keep going on with the Mr. Urban thing. Now, Keith Urban, I think we can all agree this guy got plenty of money. Plenty of money. You know what? And he got plenty of rich friends. Now, if this guy wishes to preserve Music Row, he's got the ability to buy just about any of those buildings he wants and preserve it any way he wants. And also convince numerous of his other country star and industry folks, all pretty well heeled down there, to do the same, if the sentimentality for the area is all that high. This does not require a huge movement from the average Joe like you and me, except I think what the drumming up of the sentiment is all about is to get us all to lobby our politicians here in the Nashville area to designate Music Row as a historic area and place protections on it, which ultimately means, and there are historical places that certainly need protecting, and I'm not saying that, but ultimately it means that the people who currently own those buildings, they're going to be stuck with them or restricted heavily in how they sell them or who they sell them to and what the purpose of who they sell them. That's when you get the government all up in your business. I mean, it's a lot less expensive for Mr. Urban to ask us to have a movement than it would be for him to put his money where his PR team is and go and buy some buildings and put together a team and buy up buildings and preserve them. I'm sorry, I'm not a big fan of telling other people what they can or can't do with their own property. And Mr. Urban, if you're so jacked up on this cause, go whip out that wallet and go buy some buildings, buddy. Put together a team of investors and, turn it into a tourist area and a place where people can go and enjoy the history of Music Row. Because right now, it ain't that. It just isn't. Okay? Also over at Taste of Country, the 30-year home of Johnny and June Carter Cash in Hendersonville, Tennessee, is currently being reviewed by the local planning commission in consideration for turning it into a residential medical facility. Now, Country Weekly did ask at the end of this story what we, meaning you and I, think should be done with the property. And you can post your own thoughts and feelings right there in the comments section. I posted mine. What I posted is, I don't own the, basically as summarizing because I don't remember exactly what I said. I said, that's none of my business and it's none of your business. It's the business of whoever owns the property. I believe whoever owns that property should be allowed to do whatever the F they want. That's the thing about owning something. Other people, when you own something, you're saying this is mine, but the hell out of my business. That's why you own it. It's the whole reason you buy a property. And whoever now owns it, that's their business, not mine and not yours. Now, Taste of Country is on a roll this week. The news just doesn't stop. Now, sadly, this next bit of news isn't exactly good news. Velma Smith, one of the very first women to work as a Nashville session guitarist, has passed away at the ripe old age of 87. Her death comes just 6 months after her induction into the Musicians Hall of Fame. And, that's wonderful. Much respect over there. Over at GAC, that's Great American Country, if you didn't know. Ricky Skaggs and his wife Sharon White will release an album of duets on September 30th entitled Hearts Like Ours. Now, in this blurb, Ricky gives the standard boilerplate jibber-jabber usual stuff you say when you're promoting an album. But the really great thing is the mention that he and his wife are currently celebrating 33 years of marriage. And that's awesome. Now, if the title is any indication, though, it sounds to me like it's going to be a bunch of love songs, and personally, I'm kind of sick of love songs. I hope they get around to some burning, screaming bluegrass somewhere in the mix, because I love me some of that on-fire bluegrass that Mr. Skaggs likes to smoke out of those mandolins and guitars. And I know you do, too, because Ricky Skaggs is freaking awesome. Also over at GAC, there's a remix of Brad Paisley's song Riverbank, which features the country rapper Colt Ford rapping on it for about 30 seconds in the middle of the song. I like Brad's song, but I really didn't need to hear this Colt Ford guy spitting bad country rap cliches all throughout the middle of it. My advice to you, just get Brad's version of the song and enjoy that without Colt Ford. You'll be glad you did. Nashville Gab. Over at Nashville Gab. You know what? The editor of Nashville Gab has a little... Noticed for the first time, I noticed there's a little blurb about her towards the lower left hand, where she introduces herself and has a picture of herself, and there's a little button that says "Contact Me." I hit the button and I just wrote her a little thing. I said hello. I just saw it here, third itinerant, and just say hi. That's all I wanted to say. And I also let her know that I really enjoyed the writing of Vicky. I don't know if she still writes over there, but there was a writer I used to really enjoy articles from named Vicky, and I kind of felt like a kindred spirit with that Vicky over there because she could really piss some people off, and she's had protest and letter writing campaigns about her too. So it's almost like we're brother and sister. But anyway, over at Nashville Gab, the band Shedaisy posted a residuals check, a picture of it that they received from a movie they did in 1999. They had a song placed in it called Doug's First Movie, and I think that's like I thought Doug was Nickelodeon, like the cartoon Doug. Anyway, it was for a whopping $12. Now, let's be fair, Shedaisy had some buzz going on about 10 or 15 years ago. They appeared on a commercial for something, I don't know, was it female deodorant? I don't know. But they've never exactly been a huge act. I think it's pretty cool to see that they're still around, though, and I'd love to see them getting more active or more notoriety. Fun group, that Shedaisy. Over at theboot.com, bluegrass punk group Whiskey Shivers are set to release their self-titled debut album on September 23rd. Now that's cool. How often do you hear stories about bluegrass punk groups? I can get behind me some of that. Looking forward to this one. Okay, over at the 615, which is a subsection of Billboard.com, all about the 615 area, and 615 is the area code for Nashville. Continuing on the earlier segment about concerns over the redevelopment of Music Row, I told you I was going to come back around to that. Ben Folds is moving out of historic RCA Studio A after the new owners who purchased the place, and Ben Folds was protesting, stating that they're going to destroy Studio A, while the new owners raised Mr. Folds' rent by 124%. Mr. Folds, that you kind of got to expect that when you mess with your landlords, dude. Now, I'm not cheering or jeering about this, and I feel for the guy. He's been leasing that space for 12 years and producing in it. You know what? But that's the way it goes when you don't own the place you're in. Ben is well known, and he got enough money and enough of a name. The world is Ben's oyster. So, not shedding a tear for the guy, but, this still doesn't make me happy that it no longer makes sense for him to stay there, and I'm sure he wants to stay there. So, I'm not here poking you, Ben Folds. There is a video on the boot. Over at the 615 on the boot. What am I saying? Accompanying this story, the video's from MSNBC, where Ben Folds appears with Joe Scarborough to discuss the changing face of Music Row. And you can watch it over there. I did not watch it because MSNBC, and especially Joe Scarborough, makes me break out in fits of violent rage. Nashville.com. Liking those people over at Nashville.com. Got to meet a couple of them last week. Bluegrass Legends Team Up Once Again is the title of the article about banjo master J.D. Crowe, Doyle Larson, and Paul Williams teaming up for the second time to release their new album entitled Standing Tall and Tough. I like that title. It will be released on August 19th. Over at Country Standard Time, the International Bluegrass Music Association will be presenting 8 film projects, including 2 feature films to show during the inaugural IBMA Film Festival, which will run from September 30th to October 4th in Raleigh, North Carolina. I had IBMA once. I couldn't get off the toilet for a week, and I had to drink gallons of Malanta. And this has been your Country Music News. You know what? Throughout that entire news section, I don't know if you caught this, but I felt like every time I went to say something that wasn't, stroking or patting someone on the back through that whole thing, somehow felt the need to be on the defensive and totally qualify everything I was saying and everything. And that's a weird feeling. I kind of feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I think I got really, wow, that Music Road Radio thing must have got under my skin a little bit, as much as I don't like to admit it. But hey, it is what it is, and I'm not going to stop spouting what I spout. Thank you for listening to the Undercountry Music News. The Undercountry Music News is just a small excerpt of the weekly hour-long internet broadcast Undercountry Music, where I, Neal Smith, not only round up the week in country music news and put my own spin on it, but I also play music and have great interviews by lesser-known original country acts, the kind that you won't hear on mainstream country radio. If you're thirsting for that, get on over to undercountrymusic.com, where you can listen and subscribe. You can also subscribe via iTunes to Undercountry Music. Thanks so much. Stay under, stay country.